Oh, okay. Okay, I'll do that.
Okay, I show 5:30.
Go ahead, Lindsay.
Could we call the meeting to order, please? Would you stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have nothing to report out from closed session. Before we start tonight's meeting, could I please have a few moments of silence for the passing of a previous board member, Pat Dean. And as a former counselor, I'd also like to include a colleague and beloved MJC counselor, Mr. Ron Tingley, in this moment of silence. Thank you. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes of the August 13th, 2014 regular Board of Trustees meeting?
So moved. Second.
Been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes. Is there any objections or abstentions? All those in favor?
Aye.
The minutes stand approved as written.
I'd like to move that we approve the minutes of the August 22nd special meeting.
Chair Martin,
Yes.
excuse me, could I get the first and the second on the previous minutes?
Sorry, the first motion was made by previous Chair Riley. And the second was by, was that you,
Trustee
Don?
Viss.
By
Don.
Trustee Viss.
Thank you.
And the next motion was made by Andy Martini, and the second was by,
Second. Okay.
Thank you.
was by Abe Rojas. Okay, approval of the minutes of the August 22nd Special Board of Trustees meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries.
Yeah.
Now, we have public comments, and first is Susan Beasley.
Good afternoon, good evening. My name is Susan Mendieta Beasley, and I was a student at MJC and had many wonderful times. Ladies and gentlemen, for your Board of Trustees and all the student body and all the members here, I'm here to invite you to two wonderful events taking place. I'm involved in both of them, and one of them is the Family Architectural Festival that's coming up this week, and we have lots of activities planned. And why is this important in an educational setting? Because from a very young age, we're starting to get the children very interested in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics by doing fun, creative activities. So I invite you all to come this Saturday as the kickoff. We'll be in front of the county library starting at 9 a.m. And these are all free events that are taking place all week long. So I encourage you to find your inner child with us on Saturday morning as we are making structures out of magazine rolls and masking tape. And the task is to find out how tall can we make our structure before it comes toppling down. So it has to do with structure, imagination, and figuring out weights and things like that. So a very fun time. Also some Lego architecture structures that'll be happening there. And parents, please come join the children, and grandparents also. The second item to invite you to is Modesto's International Heritage Festival. And thank you again very much, Modesto Junior College, for allowing us to have it on the campus. And I was just looking over at the board and saw Pam Fisher's photo. She was part of the original steering committee, part of the original board that helped found that in Modesto, and utilized a lot of wonderful students at MJC. And we're again having wonderful students from MJC come volunteer. That is a celebration of what brings us together, which is our American heritage, and celebrating the internationalness of our community. And that's on Saturday, October 4, 11 to 5 on the East Campus. And again, a free family event, lots of learning. We encourage you to learn about the U.S. and the world through children's crafts, the passport experience. We have Modesto's poet laureate who's prepared a special poem for us. Yes Company soloist Angel Hermosillo, and a gorgeous parade of flags. And again, we're very appreciative being allowed to use the campus for this wonderful event, and we encourage you to join us on that day as well on Saturday, October 4. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Mike Adams.
Good evening, Board. Madam Chair, I'm Mike Adams. I teach mathematics here at the college, and I'm here to speak to you tonight to respond to some questions that were asked at the previous board meeting, the one up at Columbia that had the entertaining power out. I'm sure we'll all remember that one for a while. That was pretty fun. And I want to thank you for asking the questions about the math success rates. It gives me an opportunity to share some data that I am quite proud of personally, not that I can take credit for it, but that I think you will find quite useful to address the questions that were asked about that. For context, I think we're all aware of this, but I will ask us to note that the educational environment here around Modesto Junior College is in an area of California that suffers from severe educational disadvantages. Just to quote one number, I'll try to keep the numbers to a minimum. I'm a math teacher, so I can't help it a little bit. One of the most significant factors that affects student success is the level of educational attainment of their parents and family. And in Stanislaus County, we have about a 16.3% of the population that have a college degree, a bachelor's degree or higher, compared to the state where it's 35%. So understand that the environment here is a very challenging environment in terms of student success. They arrive at college without having had family exposure to how it works. They don't necessarily have family members that can help them through the difficulties. College doesn't always make sense. There's a lot of things in college that the way they work are not what you would think at first. Now, nonetheless, the math department success numbers, which was a question that was asked about, are actually significantly above the state average. Not close to, not just a little bit below, which you might expect with the environment we're working, but significantly above. One place you can get this data to verify it for yourself is on the front page of MJC's website. At the bottom, there's the student success scorecard. You know, one of the most important numbers we're supposed to be reporting. And if you look at the portion for remedial math, where they measure what percentage of students who start out at a remedial level in mathematics eventually succeed in a college level course, when you look at the state numbers are around 30%. 30.6% of state students who start out at the remedial level end up eventually passing a college level class. At MJC, with our math department, it's 38.2%. I got to throw the 0.2 in there because accuracy. That's nearly 10% above the state average, even though we're working with an environment that is significantly more challenging than the state average. Now, one way that we could have gotten those student success numbers is, let's be honest, we could possibly have done it by lowering standards. You can always just pass people. That's a possible solution, but I know the board wouldn't be happy if that's how we solved that problem. I'm sure that nobody here is suggesting that the way we should improve success is just pass more people regardless of what they learn. So I think we do have some data to indicate that we have not actually lowered standards at MJC in order to attain this level of success. Unfortunately, the state doesn't really have numbers like they do with the scorecard. They don't measure actual standards in any way, which is, I think, a flaw in the state system. There's no measurement of standards. But when we do get reports from students who transfer off to four-year colleges, they pretty much universally report being very well prepared. And that's not always the case. There are a lot of colleges where the students transfer and they're unhappy with their preparation, where they aren't really ready for the rigor and challenge of a four-year college. So although that's not real strong data, I do think that suggests that we are indeed maintaining standards here and not just passing people to get good numbers on the scorecard. Now, this I report these good numbers not to give you the impression that, you know, we're done, drop the mic, walk off the stage. That's not at all the case. I think the math department has gotten scores like this because we continually experiment and work things. One particular example that's starting just this year is our Math 89 course. This Board of Trustees about a year ago roughly approved it. It's on the books now and we're starting to offer it. It's too soon to know how successful the Math 89 course is going to be, but it is an alternate pathway for people who are not science, technology, engineering majors. And it really, I mean, no solid data yet, but it looks like it will be a very successful path for those non-STEM major students that don't need the full rigor of a Math 90 class. So that's just one example of the continual reinventing that the math department is doing in order to maintain and hopefully continue to improve our student success. So the question was, what about success rates in mathematics? And I think it's only fair for the board to get some actual data to answer that. I would be happy to answer questions at this point, but if it's regarding data, I may have to go research and get back to you.
Yeah,
Questions?
yeah, I'm always interested in looking at data as well. Now, the statistics that you presented, Mike, that was for what category under the student success category?
In the remedial tab in the mathematics column, they have numbers in there for students who start out below the college level of mathematical preparation and what percentage eventually do attain college level success in a college level class.
So also on there would be persistence and
Yes.
a lot of other
They
factors.
have quite a bunch of different ways to break down the data. They've got similar data to what I'm describing. The English department has similar data as well.
So
I didn't look at their numbers, but I
The
suspect they're good.
relatively good performance for MJC also show good performance under those categories as well.
Yeah, in fact, we're either at or above the state in the math ones that I looked at. I didn't try to, you know, cross, you know, the fences and look at English stuff, but for math, we're doing quite well.
And I like to look at the colleges close to us too, Merced and
Yeah, the
San
cohort.
Joaquin Delta, to see how they're doing, because I feel like they're probably more representative of our student population than, say, Imperial College, which could be a
Right. You start going into the Bay Area and LA, and you have a very different environment of support for the students. Yeah.
You know, before I ask President to respond to your comments, whether this applies or not, I have students, potential students in my area that have to take math classes in Delta and Merced College because they can't get into classes or the classes aren't offered in math
Yeah.
at Modesto Junior College, and that's disheartening. And,
Yes, it is. In fact, when I was a new faculty member at MJC, like my second or third year, I was asked to serve on a panel to talk to prospective students, and that was a question that was asked. One of the parents of a student said, "I've heard that they can't get into math classes." And the reality is, yes, we're very crowded in the first week. Very, very crowded. There's usually very long wait lists, and it's hard to get in. But students that persevere usually, I can't say universally, but usually are able to get added into classes. For example, all my classes this semester, everybody who stuck around to wait for a spot eventually got a spot. And I'm hearing similar reports from other professors as well. So day one looks worse than day 8 looks.
Let me back up a little bit. The questions that were asked me was the classes that they needed in math weren't offered at MJC. That was what I was told. And so they had to go to Delta or Merced College to acquire those offerings that they needed in order to transfer or proceed in their math area. So,
To be honest, this is the first I've heard of this particular issue. It may be true. They may have some specialized class of a sort that we don't offer, but I have not yet heard that there is a situation like you're describing. But now that you've mentioned it, you bet I'm looking into it.
I have a question. I'm
Yeah.
wondering how this 5-unit class load, how that affects student success. I'm very concerned about that because I have not heard positive things. I've heard negative things, that it affects their ability to perhaps get their degree from our college. So can you explain that to me a little bit?
I
Why we
can.
have to have a 5-unit, whereas other community colleges are able to have success rates for their students with less than 5 units? I'm not quite clear. I just don't
Well,
understand.
there's
this.
a couple of different issues going on there. One is, again, we are in an environment where the students just naturally in their family environment and their social circles don't have the same level of support. So having a increased number of contact hours is more appropriate here than it would be in a place where all of the students are what you might call elite. The other issue is, in some areas, the amount of effort you put into one class pays off down the road. A good example would be our Math 20 class, our pre-algebra level class. It used to be a smaller class than it is now, about 5, 8 years ago. I don't remember precisely. This is I have to go look up the data part. We increased the number of hours that class met. And we have really good data about what that did. More students passed Math 20, and more students passed the subsequent algebra class, Math 70, and more students passed the subsequent class, Math 90. In fact, if you counted the number of units your average student had to expend to get through that set of classes, by increasing the units in Math 20, we decreased the number of units they had to take overall, on average, because what would used to occur is they would move up a level and some of them would fail and retake it in order to pass. And that takes time. That takes financial aid and delays them a semester. By improving Math 20, they didn't have to do that as often and ended up overall, on average, being better off.
In relation to passing, I've heard it time and again that students failed many of these classes at least 2 or 3 times, and they had a great deal of problems. So why am I getting these kinds of comments from students? I don't quite understand. Where you're saying they're having success, they're being able to take the class, you're spending more time with them, whereas students are telling me that after 3 times taking the class, they still haven't passed it. So I'm not quite sure what's going on here.
Well, that's true in all subjects. You'll have students that will take English 3 times and not end up passing, or will take history 3 times and not pass. You really can't prevent that unless you just pass everybody. If you maintain standards, some people will not pass. Now, some, yes, and like I mentioned, for the state overall, we are at a higher pass rate than the state, and striving to still improve even more than that. So higher pass rate does not mean 100% pass rate, and I don't think that there's any realistic way to hope for 100% pass rates in any class.
So what would you consider would be successful then for your math classes, a percentage? I'm just curious. 70%, 80%, what would you say?
It varies from subject to subject, and
Well, but class to class, then let's take Math 20, which is 5 units. What would you say is an acceptable success rate for your students in Math 20?
I think that's the
in
sort of
terms of
question we
numbers.
should compare to the rest of the state. That's the situation where if I say, this
But the
is a
rest of the
pass rate
state
that's
doesn't
good.
have 5 units, so how are we going to make that comparison?
Good point.
I don't understand how you can compare your 5-unit class with a class at another community college that's maybe 4 units. They're having a certain success rate, whereas according to what I'm seeing here, we're not having, in my opinion, a very strong success rate. But so I
The
just
numbers you're looking at, are you comparing to other colleges?
No,
or
that's
ju-
what I'm asking you.
That's what I think we should do then, is if you want to find out if a particular success number is good or bad, you have to compare to what other places are doing.
Okay, back to my original question. What do you feel is an acceptable success rate for your students in math, pre-algebra, Math 20, 5-unit class? What overall, what is an acceptable success rate? 70%, 80%? What are you feeling is successful? You've been successful.
Yes, I'm unprepared to answer that question because it's a comparison question.
You don't have the statistics?
I haven't broken it down
You
in
don't have that
individual classes.
information?
No, see,
Your math
this is all I've
teachers
got
don't
today.
have that information?
this is what I've got with me today, see? I don't have it broken down by
Is
each
it
and every class.
accessible? Can you get it?
Can I get what the success
you get
rates
the
are,
information?
or
Yes,
what
yes.
the success
Yes,
rates
can you
should
get
be,
that?
or what they are at other colleges?
Okay, you haven't answered my first question.
Right, I'm trying
I
to.
want to know what your math people feel is an acceptable success rate overall.
Mm-hmm.
You know, 70%, 80% overall. What is the success rate that you have set? Your students have met your criteria, and we said we're having 80% success rate. Wonderful. We're getting our students where they need to be. I'm wanting to know what your faculty, what have you had decided is a success rate?
I'm a little unprepared because I've never heard any discipline ask that
And
question
you've been
before.
teaching in our math department. Hello?
I have not heard any other discipline ask that question. Why are we being singled out?
Can I defer to you? You're not being singled out. There are problems in the math program. There are problems, and I'm aware of these problems. I'm concerned about these problems. And all I'm asking is, I'm asking for your information. What have you determined among your faculty is that your students have met your criteria for quote-unquote success?
So I'm not being singled out, but you mentioned math.
I think what she's talking about, Mike, and you're talking about, let me just interject here for a minute. You pulled information off the website, which comparisons are through the state. I think what Linda's asking, and she hasn't been able to explain, is when you do your analysis, your program reviews, when you do your SLOs, how do you look at your student learning outcomes? How do you measure your assessments with respect to student learning outcomes? I think that's what Linda's asking.
Oh, that's
is
an easy question.
Right,
Yeah.
but I think that's why you're going like this. It's
Yeah.
like everybody's doing student learning outcomes. She's saying when you have your Math 20 class and you organize your curriculum for Math 20, how do you assess your SLOs? How do you know you're being successful as a math class, not in comparison to the state, but with
Mm-hmm.
respect, isn't that what you're asking, Linda?
Essentially, yes, at this point.
With respect to your students. I think that's what she's asking.
I can easily answer that question because we use pretty much
Excuse
the
me
same
for
standard.
I just saw you talking like
Thank
that.
We use pretty much the same standard in all of our courses, and I'm pretty sure most other areas use a similar standard, and that is we don't want to backslide ever. We always want to be improving. That's how we maintain the success rate compared to the state that we're at and improve it. You don't get to being better than average by saying, okay, that's good enough, let's stop. That's never how you get to be better than average, by stopping somewhere. We're always comparing to previous numbers and improving them.
But what I'm getting from Linda is that, okay, so you determined it was 70% now, or 60%, whatever the percentage is, then you should be able to tell us the following year how much you improved beyond that particular percentage.
Mhm.
That's what you're telling me, that you measure that by improving
Yeah, we have
on
that
what
in our-
what that standard is. So
Yeah, we have
all
our
she's
program
asking
review.
is, do you have an idea of what your success rate, what percentage is your success rate?
Yeah, those numbers.
Arbitrarily, just, I mean, it's just.
Those numbers are in our program
answer.
review. Yeah, and our program review stretches back multiple years. That data is there. That's
So
one
if you
place.
don't have a starting point, how do you know there's an improvement? That's what I think she's saying.
Yeah, and the two. I thought it was about, do you consider yourself, doing well compared to what you should be doing and that would require me to compare to state averages. But if it's, are you improving? That's something that we definitely have data for. And the changes we've made, for example, I was just mentioning the Math 20 change. We have the data of how that improved things for students, how the success rates improved overall. That sort of answer that I can provide comes from having that data. So if that's the question, I apologize, Linda. I really didn't understand what you're getting at. But yes, we do have that data.
But you don't have it on you.
No, it's not something I was prepared to address. Yeah.
I have a question, Mike. How many students do you currently have on wait lists Second part of the question is, what are you going to do about it?
The first part of the question, I have kind of a silly answer, which is none, because we're past census day. But realistically, there are students in, let's think, Math 70, Math 90, that were on wait lists and were not able to get courses. In order to fix that, well, you have to offer more courses. That's really the only solution, unless you go to large lecture setups or online teaching. And to be honest, one of the unfortunate facts about online teaching is the success rates are lower. If you invest more in online teaching than face-to-face, just about every college I know that has tried this, their success rates are lower there. So those are the options that are available. Ultimately, the question you're asking, though, is a scheduling question, and that's a dean administrative sort of question that
You
as
don't
a
know how
faculty.
many.
Yeah, that's a dean or administrative level question. I know there are a number of students that could probably fill another, at least couple of courses, but I don't know that number.
Well, I'll ask the president the same question. How many on the wait list and what can be done?
When I looked at the start of the term at wait lists, and as we were rolling out of summer, headed into fall, there were hundreds and hundreds of students on the wait lists for math. And so lots.
So what is your solution?
At this point, the dean has been working hard trying to find adjuncts. We have confirmed that the valley as a whole is at a point where there simply are not available qualified individuals in the STEM areas. So all of the sciences, engineering, mathematics, real difficulty right now to be able to meet student demand.
So if you took 5-unit courses and went to 4-unit courses, how many sections would you gain?
That's something I've looked into a little bit. It doesn't look like there would be much of a change because, to be honest, most of our professors are already teaching overload. And they wouldn't drop down enough to, in most cases, be able to pick up another course. It's the sort of thing that on paper it looks like it would be something of a solution, but when you start actually going through the names of people and say, would this person teach another course? Would this person teach? It doesn't look like it. And you can't really know for sure. But since most professors are already teaching some overload, it doesn't seem likely.
Mike, let me ask you a question on that. Excuse me, Don. I mean, my CIO cap just came on right now. So if you had 3 5-unit math classes, that's 15 units. If you had 4-unit classes, you know, there is a definite.
And that's how it looks good on paper.
There is, but I'm just saying, okay, math was never my strong suit, okay? Budget, yes, but math, calculus, no, it's a different animal to me. So help me out here. How is that not, how would that not add sections for you when, say, for example, you're offering 4 5-unit math classes, that's 20, and, you know, 4 4-unit math classes, that's 16. That's a whole nother class there if you add it. It looks good on paper. How would that not look good for whatever? And say if somebody didn't want to teach, if they wanted to make the same money that they were making for 20 units with 16 units, there's another class in there. I mean,
yeah, and there are some faculty that would apply to.
And so, but it would also free up adjuncts. It would also free up others to teach more sections. Would it not? How would that not work?
Here's
Mike?
why. An adjunct is allowed to max out at 67% of the full-time.
No, I understand
So
that.
2 5-unit classes or 2 4-unit classes, they can't get a third 4-unit class in. So adjunct, you would get nothing else out of the adjuncts. They're already maxed out. If you go from 5 to 4, you gain nothing. And since that's ballpark half of our courses, that's half of the courses you're thinking about adding that wouldn't happen.
But overload wouldn't matter.
Overload's the place where you would
I
pick
mean,
up some.
overload is where you could pick up a class here, a class there.
There are
class
some,
here.
but
And if you picked up, say, a dozen classes with 30 students in a class,
we have only 15
I'm just-
full-time professors, so you would have to have almost every single one of them do that. And the reality is, not all of our courses are 5 units. In fact, it's not the majority.
no, but I was just saying in theory. I mean,
Yeah,
in theory,
if all our
Okay,
courses were
then-
5 units, and if every faculty was teaching a 20-unit
how many units?
overload,
How many units are your classes on average?
there's some that are 3, there's some that are 4, that are some. I haven't computed the average. I'd say
So if an
of my head,
adjunct taught,
4.84.
say, a 4-unit class and a 3-unit class, or they taught
They
a
can already
couple
do that.
3-unit classes. No, but I'm just saying you could. On paper, I can't see where, I guess I would have to work it on paper more. I don't
Yeah.
see how it wouldn't ultimately, at the end of the day, if I paid you, say, $25 versus paying you 4 times 4 classes, 16, $16 versus $25, you
And-
would want to earn $25. I mean,
well,
so you might add another class. Well, I guess I'm not just getting that. So
here's the deal.
All right.
You would net some classes. I'm not trying to say it wouldn't have any effect at all. It
right.
really wouldn't affect the adjunct much. It would affect, I think we counted through, and it was something like 8 full-timers might pick up another course, maybe. But there are side effects. And the side effects are where it gets tricky. One of the side effects would be your student success rate numbers would go down. If you take away 20% of the meeting time for a course, you're going to get more fails. You're going to get people repeating courses.
I mean,
And that's
maybe.
very hard to figure out what that's going to do.
Maybe, depends. I mean, and I don't know, that's a whole nother study, so maybe that would depend. But now's not the time to debate it, but you and I could have a talk about it later, and you could show me on paper how it wouldn't work. But,
Trustee Riley, you had a question?
I wanted to follow up on a question from Linda in terms of the comparison of the data for success. Are we comparing our success in a 5-unit class versus success in a 4-unit class at another college?
In some subjects, you
In
sort of
math.
have to. Yeah.
In the math class?
Yeah, I shouldn't say subjects, but some courses you would have to, because not all colleges match.
Okay, so in essence, what that's saying, what you're saying is, because our students need additional help compared to the state average, we need to spend more money by providing them classes with more units.
It does come down to a balancing act between unit values and success. You cut
And I-
one,
and-
the other goes up, you know.
And I find that real interesting because
Yeah.
you could apply that to all our classes, that if you want to improve their success rates, whether it be English or biology or whatever, you could provide more units and more teaching time for doing that. So it's sort of a priority as to where you want to put your resources for the benefit of our students.
Yeah, and that's a good point.
And student success isn't always just in the classroom, but it could be tutoring, it could be academic coaching, could be a number of things. So it really is not just in my mind, what I'm understanding, not just a math issue, but it's a college-wide issue where we've got to break down the silos and look at it from all departments and the effect that it has between the divisions, because money here means less money there.
Yeah, and I'm sure that a good guideline would be to see what most colleges are doing. If they're typically 3 units in some particular course and we want to be 5, I think that's a little harder to justify. Perhaps a lot harder to justify.
Okay, we have a pretty long agenda
Yeah, I'm sorry, I
tonight.
kind of monopolized your
Any
time.
more
My apologies.
pertinent questions?
I have more questions, but I know we need to move on. Perhaps at some other point, we can revisit and have Mike come in again, because I certainly do have additional questions.
Sure, I'll stick around after the meeting, too.
Trustee on that.
Yeah, good
Do
idea.
you have any comments, Andrew?
With all due respect to you and your discipline, I know you're actually one of the better math teachers. You have a little bit of a higher success rate. I do sit on the side of the trustees, and I agree with most of the statements that have come out today. Math at Modesto Junior College, especially Math 90, it is referred to by students as where students go to die. I personally took Math 90 twice, and I barely passed it the second time. We talked about success rates, and we didn't get an actual number, but on my average, on students that I've talked to, classes that I've sat in, it's probably 25 to 50%, and that is an F. I am not very impressed with math at MJC, not because of the way it's being taught. I think it's being taught very well, but our standards, you talked about standards, are probably too high. Supposedly we teach mathematics at a Berkeley level, which means that students did transfer to Berkeley from here. They'd be very successful there, but for the average student in a community college that's going to go into the community to be part of the workforce, it's probably a little bit too much. Yeah.
And it is the Board of Trustees' right to direct us to lower standards if you'd like.
Nobody's saying lower
We're not-
standards.
No, we never
No one
said
has
lower
said that.
standards.
No one has
Okay.
said that.
Don't misquote us.
Some of us, speaking for myself, might be interested in closer adherence to the CID standards and matching up with those, and,
You'd be surprised how tightly we match already.
well, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay, we need to
Yeah,
wrap
I
this up.
Okay,
Thank you
thank
very
you.
much. And thank you.
Yeah, good courage.
Okay, we're on to the curriculum Part 2 presentation.
How do we drop the screen?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Teresa's not doing her job.
Good if I knew John.
Part of it.
It's really an old job.
We could tag team it all
I
the time.
get
I'll try to be better.
engrossed in these conversations all the time.
Chair Martin, members of the board, and everyone else, honored guests. It's a pleasure to be here tonight, and I'm Susan Kincaid, presenting on behalf of MJC. We do have Barbara Adams in the audience. She asked for a little bit of a pass today because she has been in curriculum training all day on Friday, a curriculum meeting yesterday for half a day, and today we had a visit by our State Academic Senate for a technical visit for curriculum. So we've been busy with curriculum in the last 3 days.
Good evening, Board, Chancellor. Leslie Bucklew. I did ask our curriculum chair, Kathy Schultz, to join us tonight, and she is going to present Columbia's slides. I'm here, we'll answer questions, but we met in curriculum kickoff yesterday, and so much is going on, I thought it'd be great to bring a curriculum chair to the table for you to meet and ask any questions. So we'll start right off with the membership and how the curriculum committee is structured at Columbia.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. It's been a long time since I've been down here to address the board. I'm enjoying being back. As Leslie mentioned, I'm Kathy Schultz, and I'm our current curriculum chair at Columbia College. And the information that you're seeing as a starting point here just tells you a little bit about the structure of our particular curriculum committee. We have 7 voting faculty members with representatives from each of the areas. We have a few faculty that sit on there in voting positions based on their particular job description. For example, our articulation officer, she's a half-time articulation person, and she sits on the curriculum committee sort of as a permanent person. And we also have a student member, and I do want to make a point of thanking her for being here because it's Aiko, and she was our student representative last year on curriculum, and she came back for another year, so I was really excited about that. I haven't had anyone tell me for a while how interesting and fun they thought it was to be learning about curriculum. So. Anyways, and then we have a variety of members who come as exec council members who are not voting on our regular curriculum committee meetings, but they attend our curriculum exec meetings as resource people bringing issues